Okay, everyone, we're live, and let me just turn on the camera and welcome you all. Hi there, I'm Richard Ron, and get this started, and we'll wait just a minute or so just to make sure everyone is connected. I know I can kind of see what's going on here. I know there's a little bit of a lag with the system, so I just want to make sure everyone's ready, and then we'll get going. I suspect this one will be a little bit shorter than some webinars we've done in the past, but no promises, since I know how time flies and I know how we like to talk. So, but I think it could be less than the hour that we have budgeted. So that'll be good news probably for most of us, since we're all busy. Okay, so with that, I see we have 42 people. By the way, we have people, I don't know if they'll be attending or not, but we have people registered from Brazil, from Europe, from New Zealand. I saw one. So New Zealand, if you're listening, welcome. I don't know what time it is there, but it's probably the middle of the night sometime. It's 11 o'clock in the morning here in beautiful Colorado that you can see a little bit of behind me in the window. Okay, so with that, I will switch over. I'm going to turn the camera off, and I'm going to get our presentation set up, and we will get going. So I should now be sharing screens. All right, let's do a little sanity check here, little technological check. Could you just type in the chat box over on the right side of your screen a yes if you can hear me, just a quick yes, and that'll give me an idea that we're ready to get going. And I can just see the response here. By the way, here's a tip: if you're having trouble with the audio or the video, just reconnect to this presentation, and that should fix the problem. That occasionally happens with folks, and just by clicking on the reconnect, that'll help. Okay, we've got close to half of our total registered folks connected, so that's good. And we're not gonna wait for anyone else. Yeah. The PowerPoint?
Yeah, there's some more updated version. I'm not quite sure which version you're on right now. You can just run with it if you want.
Yeah, I will. Okay, so let's get going. The topic of this webinar is called Read Your Material System Fast. And this is something I've done versions of in the past. And we decided to convert this to focus on the material aspects of this assessment process. And so we're going to go through the methodology. How would you do this kind of assessment? And then talk in a little more detail about the topics that are specific to material systems or material management in a lean environment. So here's our basic outline for this webinar. Again, we'll start with some definitions. So this is a lean assessment, and specifically we're talking about mixed model material management. Those would be production environments like most of you probably listening to this have, where you have lots of different models and options that have to be built really on the same line. So the challenge from a material delivery point of view is severalfold. One is, we're not going to talk about this, but how do you get the material in-house, right? How do you procure it, all the different things you need? And especially in high-tech environments, aerospace as well, this is not a minor detail. You have a lot of exotic things you may have to procure, but that's a separate issue. Once you have the material in-house, then you have to get it to where it's needed. And we call those points where the material needs to be delivered to the points of use, where the material is used. And so those two aspects need to work hand in hand and work flawlessly for a lot of different items, and items that are not consumed on a routine basis in many cases. So second part of this webinar, we're going to talk about the methodology, Read a Plant Fast. This is not our methodology. It's really based on an article that was published in the Harvard Business Review back in, I think it's 2002. We'll talk about this. And it's really caught on. So many of you maybe have seen this assessment before. If you haven't, welcome. It's really a great one. It's become one of the most common ones. There are other assessment methodologies, but this is one that's attractive because it's really designed to allow you to do it pretty quickly. And then we'll review the elements. There are 11 elements in this assessment. We'll be looking at a subset of these as the ones that apply to materials. And then we'll talk about, okay, where do you go from here? How could you actually apply this? What are some of the resources and opportunities available to you in the future? Okay, so what is mixed model material management? Let's get into that definition. I've kind of touched on this already. But our specialty at the Leonardo Group, our focus with our little company, is mixed model line design. So that's the industrial engineering part of designing a factory with lots of different options and lots of different models. And mixed model material management, which is what we're talking about here. And of course, the two go together. So the materials, lots of variety needs to be delivered where it needs to go. And then, of course, we need to have a balanced, well-managed flow line that can actually build those products efficiently with minimum manufacturing cycle time, with highest possible quality, highest possible productivity, et cetera. So that's the realm in which we are discussing this issue of doing an assessment. Now, there are a lot of different material flow methods that you can choose. Or that would be necessary depending on your environment. For example, some of you, and this was a topic of a webinar we did just a few days ago, some of you are very high mix, low volume kinds of environments where you may not even do the same model again very, very often. And other of you are more high mixed model, meaning you have a flow line, you have a series of base models that you produce, but those models can be modified depending on customer requirements. An example of that might be Toyota or fork trucks. Toyota Material Handling is the one we're familiar with, where they have some base models. They actually have a lot of them, but those base models have the same parts per model, but then the customer can specify from a whole list of options, hundreds of different options. And so every fork truck coming down the line has some differences that you have to accommodate. And the material side, of course, needs to match that, right, to support that. Now, when we talk about lean materials, the last bullet here, we're talking about, so what's different about lean material management compared to normal material management or traditional material management? Well, we're talking about more emphasis on tools like PFEP, plan for every part, as one of the, the key methodologies you would use in that kind of environment and expect to see. Delivery route design. This is critically important. Of course, all of you, whether you're a traditional manufacturer or not, have delivery routes. The material needs to be delivered, but the way that's managed in a lean environment tends to be quite different and usually more frequent than we're used to. Then, of course, we have the classic Kanban methodology, which is really at the heart of many lean environments in terms of material delivery, Kanban signaling. And we have all kinds of kitting strategies that may be necessary if you have material that's too infrequently used, right, too low volume. And then we have this requirement really in mixed modeling of sequencing. So getting material based on a particular factory lineup for that day and delivering material to that specific sequence. So that's just a quick overview of what we mean by material management, by mixed model material management. Now let's look at this article that we're basing this webinar on. Now this is, okay, May 2002 is when the article was first published in the Harvard Business Review. And you can see I highlighted it there. It's called Toolkit, Read a Plant Fast by Eugene Goodson. And I have a copy of that actual article right here in my hands. And it's not very long. It's maybe 10 pages or so. And he describes how this came about, what inspired him to work on this, and then the method itself. And you see on the right side a RPA. RPA, when you see RPA, that means a rapid plant assessment. It's kind of a short name for this method, RPA. And you see a rating sheet. So it's one of the tools that he recommends in his methodology. You'll have a chance to download this tool here in just a couple minutes, this worksheet, along with some other ones in Excel format. We'll give that to you during this webinar. Also, you can buy the article if you want the original article itself. Actually, this morning I actually did a check, and I was able to read the article online. So you may not have to buy it, but it's not very expensive. I think it's $8. I think you can just log on to the Harvard Business Review website, find it easily, just do a search on Read a Plant Fast. And there are other ways of getting that article, but I'm recommending you do it the legal way. So just go buy it and download it, and then you'll have it. It is copyright, so I can't just send you my copy. That's the reason for that. We want to keep things above board. So part of the history of this is that this gentleman, Eugene Goodson, he's not a college professor, maybe he is now, I'm not sure, but he was a plant manager. And he got contacted by, this is in the automotive industry, a company that's making seats for cars. And he got contacted by a competitor. The competitor said, look, we have a deal for you. We'd like to come in and see your factory. And I know normally you say no to that, but here's the offer. I'll show you mine if you'll show me yours. So if you let us into your factory and do a quick tour, you can come over and see our factory, right? So a swap. But some of the rules were, number one, you've only got an hour, right? So you're not going to hang out there for very long, got an hour. Second rule, no notes and no cameras, right? So you can't document it. Whatever you see, you got to remember, right? You can't take notes or sketches or take pictures. So this guy, plant manager, Mr. Goodson, said, sure, okay, that sounds reasonable. After all, what could they learn? He thought to himself, what could they learn in an hour? And we'll send some of our best people over to their plant and do the same thing. So what harm can be done, and maybe we'll learn something. So short time later, a group of people come from this other company, and they did the tour, and they walked around, no notes, and they left, and they said, oh, we'll send you a report of kind of our thoughts, our findings in a few weeks. So he said, great, yeah, please do that. And then he sent some people over to this other plant. They did the same thing. They took an hour, no notes, walked around. So a few weeks later, a report arrives. And he goes through it, and his jaw drops because they nailed it. And they nailed a lot of details about his factory and how it was running in terms of inventory levels, manufacturing cycle times, inventory turnover, profitability. I mean, all kinds of details based on this 1 hour walkthrough. And of course, the people that he sent came back and learned basically nothing. So he said, man, something is going on here. How did they do that? And that was the genesis of this article. So how do you do a 1 hour walkthrough and actually learn something? And this could be a competitor's plant. So one of the suggestions I'll make here is, make that offer to some of your competitors. Hey, we'd like to see your plant. You can come see ours, but we'll put some boundaries around that visit. That's an option. The other one, though, is just do an assessment of your own plant. So take a walkthrough, apply this methodology to your own factory, and it won't take that long, right? And that's the beauty of this. And you can learn a lot, and that can be the basis then of an improvement plan. Give you some ideas for your Kaizen efforts by doing this kind of assessment. Right, so that's the Read a Plant Fast. And the elements of this assessment are 11. There are 11 topics that you're going to be looking for, and we're taking a subset of those. It's 6. So 6 of these are material related. But here you see all the 11 topics. Now, needless to say, your team needs to be educated before you could do an assessment like this properly. You'd need to know what you're looking for, and that's the reason for this webinar. We'll talk about what to look for in those 6. But these are the elements that you are going to go through and assess, and then come up with a score, come up with some analysis. The Excel worksheet that you're going to be able to download here real time in just a minute gives you some guidelines in terms of how you analyze your assessment, how you make some sense of it, how you quantify some of those results. So before we get into the elements, the 6 elements we're going to look at, let's talk about how this assessment would actually work based on Goodson's recommendations. So it's going to be a team. It's not just going to be you. It's going to be a small group of people. So suggestion is 4 to 5 with a team leader, and these people need to know what they're looking at. So if you're interested in equipment, they need to have some equipment knowledge on the team. They need to have production experience so they can assess what's going on, especially if you're going to a competitor. And the team also needs to possess a variety of experiences, variety of types of experience. Some people with material experience, some people with manufacturing engineering experience, some people with scheduling experience, those kind of things. So you form a team, and then the team, especially if you're visiting a competitor, you need to do a little homework. So these days it's a lot easier than it used to be, I can tell you, in terms of finding out information. So you can look up a company, check out their website, look at their annual reports, look at what people have said about them, look on YouTube even, you may find some interesting things on there, and learn about this environment that you're going to be seeing. So once you've done that, you should be ready then to do this assessment. And you want to do some initial training in Lean if that's necessary. So initial training in these elements, kind of like what we're doing right now with this webinar. And I should mention too that you want to split up, if there are actually 11 assessment areas that you're looking at, it's going to be pretty darn hard for any individual to keep track of all 11. So you want to split up the responsibility. Have one or more team members focus on 5S, for example, and organization, and maybe have another couple people just focus on the material items. Maybe have another couple people focus on scheduling and product flow, those kind of things. Just so you can be a little more focused and not have to be responsible for too many things. So then the actual walkthrough would be what we're calling here walk the Gemba. So the Gemba is the workplace, where the action is. And so you do the 1 hour tour, or it could be less than that. So you do the walkthrough, keeping track of the items you're responsible for. And then, because you couldn't take any notes, remember, you don't want this to fade. And so your team would go into a conference room and pull out these forms that you're going to be able to download, and you do your rapid plant assessment. So don't lose it, right? Don't wait too long, because memory fades, and you want to capture your scores, right? Your assessment, your evaluation of the area that you just saw. And then from there, you can draw some conclusions once you've captured your assessment. So that's it, not too tough, right? We're just providing you with some structure to be able to do something like this. Now, other tips, I think I've mentioned some of these already, but important that team members not take notes, even if it's your own factory. So there's no one telling you can't take notes, but better not to take notes because it's a distraction. So just focus on what you see and focus on communicating with the folks out there that you need to talk to. There's no law against not talking to the people out there and asking questions. So, but taking notes can be a distraction. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but each member of the team is assigned responsibility for a few of the categories. And then you need to meet right away, right after this, to capture those impressions. And one of the big questions that you want to ask yourself is, based on this tour and based on the results of your assessment, would you want to buy the products that this operation produces? And if there's some doubt about that, then what can we do to change that opinion? What improvements could be made? And again, I mentioned this earlier, but why not make an offer to swap competitor tours with some of your competitors, just like in this example? With the same rules, and see what you can learn. That could be a good way of getting into some other plants as well, with the rules. Okay, you should have a download, Excel download available to you. You should be able to click on your control screen somewhere. I don't see it where I'm sitting, but download a series of worksheets that I found on the internet. Again, I didn't create these, but they're all based on this rapid plant assessment methodology. So it's 100% compatible. It's just an Excel that makes it a little easier to add up your scores and keep control of this. So based on what I saw, this could be a really valuable tool to have. Take a little bit of time to figure it out, see what's there. But this rapid plant assessment rating sheet, we call it, is one of those worksheets in this tool, but there's some other ones that are going to be very useful. So go ahead and grab that if you like, and be able to use that in the future. Okay, so let's get into those elements that we wanted to talk about, and we'll just describe the basic the basic scope of each of these elements, and then I'll add some comments if I have any to each one of these. So I listed out of the 11, I've listed the order in which they're presented in the document, right, in the article. And this number 2 is called Safety, Environment, Cleanliness, and Order. That sounds a lot like 5S. Actually, these days we use the term, our company uses the term 7S because we added safety, and we also added security into the 5S audit that we do. So it's now 7S's instead of 5S's. So what you're looking for here, we need to clearly separate here this idea of visual workplace. So when you're doing this particular item, you're not looking for visual workplace considerations because that's coming next. That's a separate element. So here we're just looking at basic organization and cleanliness. From a material point of view, labeling is, labeling of the items is important. Are the aisles clean? They list here air quality, good, noise levels. But visual labeling system is the last one here is one of the most important ones. Also take a look at, from a safety point of view, are walking aisles clearly marked? If you use fork trucks or tugger trains, are those vehicles able to go through the system in a safe kind of way? Are people trained to interact with those vehicles in a safe kind of way? It says inventory is easy to count or estimate. One of the things I look for there is the use of cardboard boxes, because if you're storing your material in a cardboard box, there could be one part in there or it could be full. And there's no way to know just looking at the cardboard box. So that'll be an example where inventory is not easy to count or it's not easy to estimate when you can't see it. Also, a cardboard box, if it's almost empty, is still occupying the space of a full box. So containerization of parts is a big deal, right, in a lean environment. Typically moving towards maybe more containers, but smaller ones that are easier to handle and much easier to count and estimate. Also, FIFO says parts are easy to find. So FIFO is something you want to look for. Are your material handlers able to replenish material from behind and then consume the oldest parts from in front, as opposed to pushing material up against a wall, where the oldest stuff is always up against the wall, unless you actually physically move things out, and that can be a pain. So, that's just a quick summary of the kind of things you want to look for. And basically, chances are good, I'm saying here, chances are good that if it looks good, then it is good. That's not a guarantee. Things could look good but be really bad. But that's unlikely, I would say, unlikely. If effort's been put into organizing visually, then chances are that the systems behind it are also pretty tight, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to maintain or sustain that environment, right? So that's the first one. Let's move on. So visual management. So again, kind of related to 5S, but with a slightly different focus. And we have a nice list here of the things you're looking for. Maybe the 5S person on your team is also responsible for this one. But you're looking for things that you can see, so that's visual, that help you manage. So the list of kind of things you're looking for include basic signage. So are all your aisles identified clearly? Are the material storage racks identified with an address? Identifying, row and shelf even, is all that very clear? Another highly visual system you're going to look for is the use of Kanban, like Kanban for materials. So do we have Kanban bins, cards? How's that all handled? Is it all pretty clear and out in the open? Do you have Kanban status boards, if those are needed? Kanban collection bins, if you're using actual physical cards. Color coding is really great. So not just color coding on the aisles, so clearly painted aisle demarcations that identify where to walk, where not to walk, etc. But also you could even color code sections of the factory, so so that people understand what part of the process they're actually in by the color. Graphical work instructions. So when operators are out there doing work and they need some guidance or some help, what is it they're referring to? Are they referring to a printed document or binder with lots of text that they have to read through? Or have you provided them with basically a picture with notes that will give them a reminder of the steps? Especially important in a mixed model environment where you may not have worked on this particular model for a while and you're not training in how to build it, but you need a reminder, a refresher on how to do that work. So graphical work instructions typically at hand. More and more of these graphical work instructions are being displayed via LED monitors, electronically, and getting rid of the paper. And then all kinds of status reports, so productivity charts, certification charts. I'll show you an example of a way of displaying these. Certification chart would be for the operators in this area, who's in training, who's certified, who are the masters, who are the trainers within that area, and you show that in a matrix kind of format for that department or that area. Maintenance records, look for those. So walk up to a machine. Where are the maintenance records for this machine? Are they available? Are they stored next to the machine? Are they hidden somewhere? And then kiosks. I have a picture of a kiosk I'll show you here on the next slide. But kiosks to organize this kind of information and display it, including production status, would be a good thing to see there. Now, and-on systems. And-on is a Japanese word. I'm not exactly sure what it means. Probably signal light of some kind. But by that we mean a visual signaling system. For various things, maybe an and-on system for material replenishment when that's needed, line down, right, line stoppage, that kind of thing. And then I added even things like pick to light. This is a kind of an aid for operators when you have a lot of variety in parts and you want to reduce the possibility of picking the wrong parts. So for any given model, this might even be a RFID signal, RFID tag, that triggers a particular set of lights on the bins in front of that operator, if you set it up that way. A little bit of a high-tech solution, not always needed, but these things are available and can help to reduce, again, reaching out and picking up the wrong shim, for example, because it looks identical to a whole bunch of other ones. Okay, so again, elements of a visual management system, look for that and give an assessment of maturity there. So here's one of these kiosks that we talked about. There are more than one company that makes and sells these, and I've seen homemade versions of these as well, but it looks like this. And I think this one actually rotates, so you don't have to walk around it, you can just spin it, but it has 4 sides, and on this particular one, you can see one side is dedicated to safety, another one's dedicated to production, so production status, and you might have another side dedicated to, let's say, quality, or 5S scores on 5S audits, those kind of things, and you just show them on a kiosk like this in the area, right, in the area in which you're working. The other thing to just comment, a side comment, is that although this is clearly a staged photo, it is showing that people are updating these things, and the recommendation there is have the folks that work in that area update their own data, right, because then they're actually looking at it. And you can see someone updating this by hand, which is, again, another recommendation. You don't have to automate this. It can just be a form, and people take a marker that's available there and they update it by hand. There's a lot of value in having people get close to their data, right, and see it, and this applies to them. All right, so that is number 3, I think. Number 4, scheduling system. So let's just mention that in a flow line, flow line that is organized around the concept of pull, what you have is operators working on that line and working based on a signal, which is that the unit they produced was consumed and we need to build another one, basically. So it's pulling from the end of the line in a basic kind of way. But somewhere in that system, you need to know what to build, right? It can't all be on a pull system. You have to have some idea of what to do next. So especially in a mixed model environment, that may not happen at the end of the line. You could imagine a production line that's building a small number of items, or maybe just dedicated line, building one where you don't need to actually schedule any place other than at the end of the line. Give me 10 of these, and then all the other signals would be triggered from the end of the line. But in a mixed model line, that wouldn't work, because I need to know what to start, and we could be doing 100 or 1,000 different configurations on the same line. So when you just say do what's next, I need to know what the next thing is. So that scheduling point would need to be at the beginning of the line, but or at some place in the middle. It's wherever the product becomes unique. So if that product becomes unique at the beginning of the process, then that's where the signal needs to be. If it's generic up to a certain point and then it becomes unique further downstream, that's where the signal would need to be. But the point is a single scheduling point, as we're saying here. If you don't have a single scheduling point and you're scheduling more than one area based on MRP or based on a production schedule, those areas are going to get out of sync. Guaranteed they are. And then you're going to have inventory or delay. So you want to design the entire process, including feeder lines and upstream processes, on a pull, right, connected together. But you still need to understand how these are going to be signaled. So not a minor detail, so you want to have someone with some expertise doing this assessment, but it's something you want to look at. And if you are doing multiple department scheduling, that's an unlean approach, and you want to look at opportunities to connect those together, okay, as much as you can. Now, that doesn't mean that you occasionally will need to have disconnected processes or independent processes, but you can still connect these via a pull signal. But that pull signal may not be one-to-one, it may be a Kanban card or some other kind of signal. So when I said no MRP here, don't get excited. I'm not saying that you don't need an MRP system. You do need one. You do need one, because especially with materials, we have too many things to keep track of. You need to know what you need accurate bills of material, you need a master schedule, you need long lead time item planning, et cetera. You need MRP. But what we mean by MRP here is departmental scheduling, is what we're trying to eliminate here with a lean-based scheduling system, right, that communicates via a signal, except for that one point where you really need to know what to do next. So I hope that's clear. I'll take a pause just for a second here to do a little bit of an announcement. Now that I have you captured, right, have you here in my clutches, we have another webinar, kind of like this one, but on an entirely different topic, really. But I think it could be of interest to you next Tuesday. That's May 10th. So next Tuesday, same time, same place. I don't know if this time works out for you, but I think it works out for us. So we picked it. It's kind of the middle of the day for most of us here in North America. Apologies to Europe and elsewhere. So the subject of this one is really pretty exciting. It's how do you make sure that your line designs or your improvement, your Kaizen improvement activities work right the first time. And we're going to show you some examples. These aren't theoretical examples. They're case histories of things that have gone horribly wrong, even with something that you might think was a slam dunk, that was a no-brainer, should have been easy, but went wrong. So we'll share that with you, and then we'll show you how you might address this using an Excel-based simulation software tool. In other words, design a new process and then test the design within this Excel-based simulation tool that's designed specifically for lean kinds of applications. Not just factories, could be lean material delivery, could be office processes, but that are lean in the sense that they flow, right? One step after another that's linked and balanced and reduces that total lead time, et cetera. So this is really interesting, I think you'll find, where we're dealing with actual cases, actual kind of disaster stories, and then how these might have been addressed. And we'll actually build one of these models right before your very eyes so you can see how this actually works. So pretty exciting opportunity. So hope you can make it. You can click, I think on this control panel too, you can register for this webinar if you want to right now. Even if you know you can't make it, you can go ahead and register, and then you'll get a reminder about the playback. So even if you know that that's not going to work for you next Tuesday at 11 o'clock Mountain Time, go ahead and register for it, and then you'll be on the list to get the playback. All right, so let's keep going here. Use of space, movement of materials. So we're back to our assessment, and you want to look at how materials are being moved, and you want to also look at how the space is being utilized. Materials are a major consumer of factory floor space, especially if done wrong. So you want to look at the efficiency of moving. Picking up materials, putting them down, picking them up, putting them down falls in the category of waste. So you want to take a look at what's going on in that scenario. You really want to look at the level of container standardization. You would like to see a certain number of standard containers, ideally not cardboard, right, that are plastic containers or other types of containers, but standardized on a certain number of types, leaning towards smaller containers. And maybe you have to move more of them, but they're smaller containers. Ideally, those containers are going all the way back to the outside supplier, right? So they're recycled containers that go back and forth via a milk run, and external milk run to those outside suppliers would be ideal. And then you want to look at the material stored line side, right, or at the point of use. I put a little question mark here. This is the second bullet on the slide. It says production materials stored line side. Optional. I think there's been a sea change here in my thinking, and I think a lot of companies' thinking. The philosophy in the past, and by the past, I don't mean that long ago, but maybe 10 years ago, was let's try to store as much as you can in front of the operator or line side. Why? Because then you don't have to move it as often, right, or handle it. And that's pretty much what I saw reflected in this author, Eugene Goodson's article, was this point. Production materials stored line side. But what I'm seeing is a change in that philosophy because production materials stored line side take a lot of space and they drive quite a bit of inefficiency from an operator point of view. Operators have to travel more. They can make mistakes in part selection. You need more physical room in front of that operator, or you have operators walking away from the station to get material. Not a good scenario. So what I've seen at leading lean companies, I mean, the best of the best are moving away from this and moving more towards being willing to handle the material more, but being able to deliver very small quantities all the way down to a single unit's worth, which is kind of what we call a kit, to an operator in the interest of shrinking down that workspace and providing operators what they need more directly, right in front of them, exactly what they need. Now, they offset the cost of that additional handling through improved operator productivity, through improved quality, through freed up floor space. So that's what I see. So I'm putting a question mark here, but it's something you want to look for in any case. And certainly you don't want to look for you don't want to see a huge amount of material at the workstation. That is definitely, either way, that is a no-no. Now, tools and setup equipment near the machines, yes, that too could go along with that assessment. And when you talk about use of space or movement of material, you definitely want to see flow manufacturing kind of environment versus departmental scheduling or departmental organization. In other words, the machines and the people are working in a continuous flow all the way from upstream processes to downstream. I know that's difficult, especially when you start talking about machines and fabrication, and shared equipment becomes virtually impossible. But that's kind of what you'd like to see. In a perfect world, all the processes required are connected, right, into a flow. And where you can't do that, then you invariably have inventory. Another thing to look for in terms of movement of materials is fork trucks. Now, I mentioned earlier, we spent a lot of time at Toyota Material Handling. They build fork trucks. So we're not saying that fork trucks are bad or evil. That would be not a good thing to say, but they have their place, right, in terms of what they're needed for. Very heavy items, large items, pallets. You need fork trucks to move those pretty much. But within the factory, we like to reduce, and Toyota does this as well, reduce the need for fork trucks on the factory floor as much as possible. And they are moving most of their material via a tugger system, tugger train. So take a look at the amount of fork truck activity, and a high level of fork truck activity would be a candidate for assessment, right? Can we reduce that? Okay, number 6 in the assessment, levels of inventory. So we're just talking about the amount of inventory, a little bit of overlap on this one with the previous one, but you're looking at the amount of inventory from a inventory turnover point of view primarily. So a good measure of leanness is I don't see a lot of component parts being stored either in the at the points of use or in the supermarket. You may have material supermarket. Now, how much is a lot or not a lot? Well, it's going to vary, but for many factories, a few hours of WIP or a few hours, it's going to depend on your manufacturing cycle time, right? If you're building airplanes or something different, then things aren't going through as quickly. But few hours of WIP or raw material on the floor. I'll give you a benchmark. Toyota Material Handling, that I'm just finished talking about a little bit, their target is about a shift's worth of parts at a workstation. So it's about, what, 7 hours, 7-something hours of material at a workstation as their goal when they're calculating their Kanban quantities, et cetera. Now, that means they have to replenish pretty often. Yes, these tugger trains go around every 35 minutes or so. So that's really often. But that allows them to have a small amount of material at the workstations with not a lot of risk of running out. But it does require that commitment. So I mentioned here frequency of replenishment. And in general, you want to do an eyeball of the area and look for, are there any piles of parts? One horror story, I won't mention the company's name, but maybe some of you will recognize this. This company had a policy of not returning anything that's delivered from the warehouse, not returning it to the warehouse. So over time, any deliveries that were delivered in more than the quantity that was needed would be stored kind of off on the side at a rack behind the assembly line. And over time, it was just a mess of stuff. So that would be a nice big red flag if you see an environment like that you really don't want to see. Right? So levels of inventory and work in process. What should your inventory turns be? Again, that's going to depend on your industry. I mean, automotive is focused a lot on improving inventory turns into the, teens, 20s, or maybe even higher in some cases, inventory turns. But if you're in electronics or you're in a high mix, low volume environment, other kinds of environments, you may not have that opportunity, even if you're really good at getting inventory turns to that level. But the main point is start at the points of use, optimize your material supermarkets, if you have those, to just a few days, and then you can focus your eye of Sauron, your attention on the warehouse, and get that down, because that's where your inventory is going to be. If you design the floor correctly, that's where your inventory is going to be. If there's any excess, that's where it's going to be. It's not going to be on the factory floor. So that's the beauty of that approach. Sometimes it's hard, I mentioned here, to know how much is a lot just by looking, because if you're in a higher volume environment, what looks like a ton of material could be a day's worth, right, or less. It just adds up fast. So again, you have to take that in consideration. To the unschooled eye, it may look like a mountain of material, but if you're a high volume plant, it really may not be that much from a number of hours perspective. Okay, I think this is the last one. We want to look at supply chain integration. So outside suppliers, how are those being communicated with? So are you pulling material from suppliers, or is material essentially being pushed from an outside supplier via MRP? So MRP is the classic push system. Here's the PO, here's the delivery date, deliver it to us, whether we need it or not, right? Whether we need it or not, the scheduling system thinks we need it, but if something happened and I don't really need it, well, we're going to get it anyway. Here it is. So the alternative to that, and again, this is what many companies do, is they have a milk run for outside suppliers where trucks will go out on a routine, sometimes often daily basis, and pick up full containers, drop off empties, all based in many cases on a sequence, on a production sequence that's been communicated to these suppliers prior to showing up with the truck. How much before? Well, it depends on the lead time, right, that they need to respond to that order. But this is a way of really getting tight control over your outside material. Again, same as inside, frequent deliveries, small quantities, but this time with outside suppliers. Look at the containers going out the door. Are they customized containers, recyclable containers? Or again, are we getting a lot of deliveries in cardboard boxes and things that we have to unpack, clean up, throw out, et cetera? And you're not going to see this, but you have to ask the question to the folks that know, how are suppliers actually paid? Is it based on consignment? Is it based on purchase order dates? Do you see a lot of paperwork related to our outside suppliers? If you do, that might be an indication of some inefficiencies there. A lot of red tape, related to outside suppliers. So again, you probably need someone on your team that is more familiar with this realm, and you're probably going to have to talk to more people than be able to see with your eyes in this part of the assessment, because the outside suppliers are not physically there. Okay, so what you want to do, you've done your walkthrough, you have your team, you've looked at these 6 elements, if you're just talking about materials, or all 11 elements if you're doing the complete assessment, and you want to have this tool available, and you sit down in a conference room somewhere with your team and you fill this out. So you're going to rate each of these 11 elements on a score of, it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's a score of poor is 1, best in class is 11. Best in class would be, there's no one in the world doing this better than us, or better than what we saw, right? So unlikely that you're going to see too many best in classes, but you could, and then excellent, above average, etc. And then you can create a total score based on that. Now, there are other worksheets that we're not looking at here that you'd want to educate yourself on in terms of making sense or making some use out of these scores. But main use, just to keep it simple, is you want to use this as a way of developing a database or a list, a checklist, or a to-do list of opportunities for improvement for Kaizen. If you don't do that, then why do the assessment? Right? You just wasted your time. You want something practical to come out of this, and that's going to be a checklist or a to-do list of things that we need to work on, hopefully in priority of benefit, right? So select the things that are going to give you, that are either very easy to do or that are going to give you a lot of benefit, and focus on those first. It's amazing how many ideas can come out of an assessment like this, even a 1-hour walkthrough. It's mind-blowing. Now, there are other assessment techniques you could use, like value stream mapping is a very common one, but this is the one that's really the fastest, and it can generate really positive results in terms of things to do in the future. So what do we need to do to use this technique? Well, first of all, your leadership, or the people on this team, and leadership in general, need to be trained if they're not already. So if you're not higher on the lean learning curve, the lean maturity scale, not as high as you need to be, then some training may be in order, right? So people know actually what to look for. What is a lean environment? What are we looking for? Now, second step here on this list, do the RPA. So remember, RPA is a rapid plant assessment. Do it for real, so do one. And then you've got a list, coming out of that is a list of things you need to improve on. Now, even the best athletes, I listed Peyton Manning here, and then I realized, whoops, he just retired. I'm in the Denver area, so Peyton Manning was our football quarterback. For those of you not following this, famous guy, but he just retired. So, but even Peyton Manning, or you name it, tennis pros, Rafael Nadal just won some tournament a few weeks ago. All these people have coaches, so it might be a good idea to accelerate your learning curve by having someone who's done this before, right? Get involved. And then you need to create you're going to have lots of ideas. I guarantee you, you're going to have, believe me, as Donald Trump would say, believe me on this. You're going to have a long list of things that you're going to want to work on. So you need to have a plan for getting that done. And that typically involves a lean steering committee, someone to make those decisions, right? A group within your company. And you may have that already. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir here. But you need a lean steering committee, make the decisions, establish the priorities, and develop or use a roadmap. A roadmap is simply a step-by-step guide to, to actually executing these kind of improvements. How do we do this in a consistent way? There could be a roadmap around organizing and conducting a Kaizen event, for example. So you're consistent, and roadmap is a standard work for improvement activities. So you have something to improve, right? Improve your process. The process of improving can be improved, in other words. And pilot. So pilot with an exclamation point. This is plan, do, check, act in a nutshell. So pilot means try something out as an experiment if you're not sure and evaluate the results, and then roll it out if you're successful, and don't roll it out if you're not successful, but you're not betting the farm on any of these improvements. So that's really a very quick overview of that whole process. So one more announcement. Again, captured audience, don't go away. In about a month, a little more than a month and a few days, we have a really outstanding opportunity to explore what we just talked about in this webinar and a lot of other things, a lot more detail. This is a mixed model material workshop. So it's a 3-day experience. It's at Toyota Material Handling. This is in Columbus, Indiana. So it's at the factory in their really beautiful training facility there. But it includes time out on the factory floor, time not just with us, we're the instructors, but time with the Toyota engineers on these tours and during lunch Q&A sessions. And we're entirely focused on mixed model material management in these 3 days. All kinds of things, not just classroom learning, but again, as I said, plant tours, hands-on exercises, Q&A discussion, and meeting peers from all kinds of companies, other companies. So great opportunity. Here's the special offer for you guys. Early bird discount is $300. That's still active until, well, I think good for 7 days. So it's good for another 7 days. And that's normally $300. If you take another $200 off, or we'll take another $200 off by virtue of your attendance in this webinar. So it's code, if you click on this link, I think you have it here, click on this link, webinar 0607. You can take advantage of that, but that's good for just the next 7 days. All right? So, 0503, sorry. Mistake here. So webinar 0503. By the way, you'll be getting a follow-up email, so you don't have to remember all this after this webinar. Okay, so with that, let's hear from you very, very quickly. Did you find this valuable? Good stuff. I mean, most of the work is going to be yours, right, to go out and maybe read in a little more detail about this methodology and do it, but I think it should be part of everyone's toolkit to know about it and really apply it. Also, if there are any other topics that occurred to you during this webinar you'd like to have us consider, for a presentation, just type it in. You can type this in the chat box here and just let us know what you'd like to see in the future. All right. So again, the downloads, the links that we've talked about in this webinar, you'll be getting those in an email. The email will be coming in a little bit. We usually wait for the replay video to compile. That takes, I don't know, an hour or two, a couple hours. But you will be getting an email, so look for that with these links, so you won't miss anything here. Okay, with that, how do we do? So less than an hour. I thought it might even be faster than this, but it's 52 minutes, so that's good. We can all get back to work, but thank you for attending. Really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you on future webinars. We plan to do these pretty often. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye now.